All right, everyone, welcome in UGA Football Live with JC Shelton. That is former Georgia defensive lineman Jon Ledbetter. John, out of the bullpen, man, I know Artie's missing. He's learning his ABCs. He's at Cornell. It's a very, very tough outlet for him. Absolutely, and it's hard because he has to use his brain power. And we know Artie talks about it all the time. He took way too many hits in the league and in college football. But no, you stepped in. You're out of the bullpen, backed by popular demand because we had a lot of good reviews when you came on the show just a few weeks ago. So really appreciate you jumping on, man.
Man, I'm glad to be back, bro. Appreciate you for having me again, and always willing to cover for a dog.
Absolutely, dude. I love it. I love it. Well, speaking of dogs, let's get your thoughts on Georgia, Texas, man, and I'll set it up for you. The folks heard my instant reactions. We went late after midnight on Saturday, and it was one of the better instant reactions we had because of the turnout. Obviously, what happened, how Georgia played one of the most complete games it has this year. Your instant reaction to how the dogs played. I think we talked about that game a little bit when we first talked a few weeks ago. But obviously, what was your reactions there and how the dogs put one together in Austin and came out victorious over the number one team in college football?
Oh man, I was excited, bro. Obviously, you can imagine, going to that game, it was definitely a statement game. Definitely getting beat to Bama and then having them do what they did to Bama. It's just like one of those ones where it's like, all right, we got to get this done, and let's do it. And I will say, like, if I'm being super critical, started off a little bit, rocky in the beginning, some turnovers, almost turnovers, and just kind of letting things just not start fast. And I was glad to see that the Dogs came away with a victory and a dominant performance, in a 4-quarter football game.
Yeah, and that gets me so deeply, man, is because when I first watched that first quarter, and my wife was sitting there watching it with me, just yelling at the TV. She loves to yell. It actually gets me hyped up. I enjoy it. First quarter, Carson Beck throws 2 interceptions, and not only are you not down, you're ahead.
Yeah.
And if you would have told me that, man, if you'd have told me, okay, this Texas team, number one in total defense, top 5 offense, you throw 2 interceptions and you're leading in the first, I've been like, I would have laughed in your face, but like, absolutely not, man.
That's the rule of thumb in football is like, if you win the turnover battle or if you lose the turnover battle, it's like a 90% dictator of the game. So like you do 2 picks like back to back, really almost 3, and it's like all right, what we doing? I was definitely yelling at the TV as well. I was like, man, I got like a weird superstition. I'm like, if I start watching the game from the beginning and it's like we don't do as good, so I always try to turn it on like after like the first quarter or like just a little bit of time passed. But man, they stuck to it, man. They played hard and man, honestly, they just started complementing each other really well, offensively and defensively, and it was just a hard fought football game, and I think one of the better performances from the Georgia football team we're seeing this year. And I'm excited to see them move on from this and continue to keep it going. Now you got some of that confidence. And, I would say, even with the mistakes early on, it's like, okay, well, we can still get this done against damn good football teams. And we can keep this pushing. And we have to keep this pushing if we want to win.
Absolutely. Let's talk about that defense, John. And you're as about an expert as you could get. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this because, you came into this game with Texas and a really, really stout offensive line. I mean, I looked into this game all week. We talked about it a couple times. I wrote about it. We go into this game, and I was so surprised at how dominant Georgia was up front. I think the entire nation was, Georgia fans included, because we had seen inconsistent play. We had saw guys beat up, like Michael Williams missed some time. Warren Brinson missed some time. Jordan Hall's a former 5-star, kind of a rotational piece as a youngster, but he's missed some time. So it's like, all of a sudden they get a little bit healthier in this game and they make that Texas offensive line look bad at times, straight up bad. Now they have their own plays that the Texas offensive line, they rushed a little bit in the second half, better than the first and stuff. So they didn't have a bad night entirely, but a lot of those plays and those sacks, they allowed 7 sacks on the night. It's an incredible performance by that Georgia defensive line. What did you see out of those guys, man? Did you come away impressed with a certain player or two? I know there was a few on the stat sheet that stood out, but how do you think, and Kirby Smart obviously was focused on that defensive front, really eating, as he calls it. What were your thoughts there?
I think that's the dominant performance that you got to have as an SEC football team if you want to win, not only against the pass, but also against the run. You got to have run stuffers. who stuff gaps and make stops. And you also got to have pass rushers who, get to the quarterback and, they beat, whether they have first-round guys that they do on their offensive line, just like we got first-round guys that we do on our defensive line. They're going head-to-head, and it's just in those competitions, who wins the most. And, obviously you can tell from that game, we won the most. Obviously, Michael Williams, he was going crazy. He wearing my number 1-3. He's representing it really well. And, it's pretty cool to see guys, like that and his story, when he first came in, me being the older guy and him just becoming that beast, you know what I'm saying? And also, Walk, man, big Walk dog, man, he going crazy, man. He just balling out, man, the turnovers that they were able to cause and just the havoc that they caused on the offensive line and the quarterback. And just everybody, man, I think we had, a couple of DBs going there and get some sacks too, you know what I'm saying? It's just, it's encouraging to see that defense light up like that and continue to put, the effort that they know that they have to put on the field, but against teams like that. It's like, you always got the games where it's like, okay, we're playing this big team and they got these guys or these guys, but it's always who's going to show up, who performs, under the lights, whether it's, in college, whether it's in the NFL, you got to show up. And there's a saying like in the leagues, like any given Sunday, it's literally just like that in college football, any given Saturday, you never know what's going to happen, especially within, the SEC. And, what Texas has been able to do, since they entered the SEC has been, great. They got a hell of a football team, and we just had to go out there and show that we got a damn good football team too. And we got to keep doing that.
Yeah, I love it, man. The 7 sacks, 10 tackles for loss. You held Texas to 259 and 29 yards on the ground.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how you win an SEC game, right?
Yeah. I mean, we used to have
stop the run, baby.
We used to have a metric when I was there, and it was like, the team doesn't get over 50 rushing yards, and like, that's a dominant like performance. Like that's dominant. Like that's elite. And to even beat that out is like, damn, like, boys playing with their heads on fire, you know what I'm saying? And like, that's what it takes. That's what it takes. And I think they know now they have that bittersweet taste in their mouth of like, damn, we should have never even got that loss that we got, and it's like, okay, now we got to everything is on the line. Like, it doesn't matter, if we lose one more, like it could be wrap, so we got to make sure we do what we do every single game, from this point forward. So it was the best thing that could happen to that Georgia football team, their loss against Bama. And I think they're proving themselves, little by little, game by game. Yeah.
And you and I and Artie, we talked about that at length, really, which was, and we brought up a game in your past, which was Auburn, when you played in the SEC championship. That was kind of your get back game. You get blown out early in the season, and that creates either a do or die attitude. Either we're going to fold or we're going to exceed our potential that we have right now and show up and respond. And then Georgia did it, right? You had that Alabama loss. We talked about it. What goes into the mental work and getting yourself prepared to go on in a hostile environment, number 1 team in the country, you're underdogs. Can you use that to your advantage and play better and beat the man across from you? Or do you let the noise get to your head a little bit? And Georgia had the great response, right? And you talk about Jalen Walker, made some absolute money. I mean, I saw half of my Twitter timeline was NFL draft scouts just like drooling at the mouth about Jalen Walker.
Yeah, man, he's a dog, man, and he's a different type of a caliber type of player. And man, he's a leader on and off the field, and he likes to give back and just give to the game too. And it showed, and it continues to show. His draft stock is definitely rising up if it wasn't already at the top.
Absolutely, man. And I've heard so many good things about him as a leader, like you said, as a person. And he's a coach's son. And Kirby Smart has talked at length since he joined. He's done the right things from a character standpoint, from a hard work standpoint. And now he's that elder guy that really just draws respect from his teammates, the way he approaches things. And you saw clips of him on the sideline just getting guys ramped up, even after a great defensive stance, come off, hey, we're not done, right? A lot of game left and stuff like that. How important is a leader like him in your experience on a defense like this with just so much against them, right? Because you have so much talent on offense, and we know the penalties are definitely not two-sided, right? It's so hard to play defense nowadays. We saw it with the targeting and those penalties and stuff. Georgia was missing 2 safeties in the fourth quarter. And then you had to make stops, right? Georgia gets off the field twice on downs with backup safeties. I mean, how important is leadership like that in those moments?
I mean, it really is. Like, you never know what's going to happen in between the football game, and you got to be able to respond. And it's one thing to just say respond, but there's also another thing to actually go out there and encourage guys to respond, because there's going to be ebbs and flows to the football game. You got to know that, the momentum is going to shift at some point, but it's all about, hey, how do we come together and get this back in our favor? And you can't do that without guys like, Jalen Walker, who are going to, rally, have the guys rally around him from what he's doing from a physical and, example standpoint on the field with his play, but also with his words, also with, how he encourages guys on the sideline and, just brings guys up. It's kind of like an energizer money. I mean? He's like on the sideline, he's playing good, he's playing tough, playing hard, the Georgia way. And he's also exemplifying, those attributes of a leader who is going to talk guys through stuff when you do make mistakes, or when you're in situations where you don't necessarily have the control, or, plays are made and people got to step up and respond who weren't necessarily in those roles, from the start of the game. And the beauty of, Coach Smart and the way he recruits is, even young guys, if they haven't played a lot of snaps or anything like that, they're all coached the same. So they have the same coachability. He makes sure, some guys may get it slower than others, but when your number is called, those guys respond, and they did. And it showed, like I said, and it's pretty cool to see that, because it not only shows you, you can have a good football team, you got your starters out there and you're playing good and you're winning, but, those teams where you can, plug guys into any piece, or, who can plug any gap, or, just plug the leaks. And it's like, those guys are truly invaluable, and you don't realize it until you need to use them. And then when you need to use them, it's like, okay, this is why, you're here. And understanding that role as a leader, but also as a person in that role is what it takes to, continue to win football games when you are facing injuries and, guys are dinged up and just things like that, of that nature.
Absolutely. And Georgia was missing Smile Mondon, a huge part, all SEC linebacker, former 5-star, and you really didn't notice that from the inside linebacker group. That just tells you, in Georgia, recruits at the best of the country in that position. Chris Cole has some really, really good snaps there, and helping out Raylan Wilson and CJ Allen. Those guys played great. So you step up and not only step up in a big moment, but against a really good team, and that's just so impressive if you're a Georgia fan. And if you are a Georgia fan, you want championships. Obviously, it's where you want. And I think that game showed you that you could win one. I think Kirby Smart and that staff knows, hey, we got a team to win one now. There might have been some doubt. Now, Kirby wouldn't have said that, and they probably don't talk about it that way. But, subconsciously, if there was any doubt, you probably feel a little differently now than you did in Tuscaloosa after that game. Yeah, I think all things considered, I do want to make a quick note for all the Dalen Everett haters out there, and SEC fan bases did, Georgia fan, listen, it's always the offensive coordinator, it's always a cornerback. I feel like offensive coordinators and cornerbacks get the most hate. Well, I guess maybe quarterbacks too, but cornerbacks, maybe the most hated position that just draws a bunch of unneeded flack for no reason. I thought Dalen Everett has had a better season this year than he had last, but you would have heard we need to start Ellis Robinson stuff. Hey, I'd love to see Ellis Robinson on the field. He's so talented. He'll be great. But Dalen Everett had a game of his life. I mean, 7 tackles, a sack, tackle for loss, forced fumble on the sack fumble, and an interception by himself. I mean, that is so impressive, man, because you hear that stuff. These kids nowadays, John, they see everything on social media. They can't stay off of it, man. It's impossible. Right. So he sees that, and that response for him as a story, as a guy who loves just guys kind of overcoming things like that. I'm so happy to see that for him.
Man, me too. Likewise. I tried to sneak it in there before. I said, you got, corners, getting sacks, man, and, changing the game. It was definitely in their territory, and you get a play like that and you capitalize on that as an offense too. It's like, dang, like this is how we got to play. This is how, football complements each other. And, to have him just playing his pretty much playing his ass off, man, that's what it takes. And to, quiet the naysayers, that always feels good as a player. Even at the next level, it doesn't change. Or even at levels under that, if you got people who hating on you, or, people who saying you can't do something, and you just prove the haters wrong, it just makes your testimony that much stronger. And testament to him, man, he's a great player, and he's going to do many more, amazing things at UGA in his career. And, it just takes with believing in yourself first. And then, when you got teammates around you and then leaders on the team who also believe in you, it brings out the best in you as a player, whether you're having a bad game that day or, a bad play, it doesn't matter. It's always the next play anyway. But, man, he had a phenomenal game, and he keeps playing like that, and he's going to find himself at the next level easily.
Yeah, and speaking of, and that's a perfect segue, John, I read this morning CBS Sports' latest mock draft. He was going first round.
Yep.
And that was the first time I've seen that. But, he just happened to go first to be, mocked first round after the game of his life. I mean, those type of games, you can make some money.
Yep. And it
awesome.
always is like that. Those are the money games. And, people say it's like, okay, this is a money game. This is a money game. But, you got to go out there and make the money. You got to, you got to put the money in the bag, man. And you got to go out there and show out. And then when you do that, obviously everything starts to, unfold for you.
Yeah. I do want to touch on the penalty, that pass interference penalty that was not a pass interference. Obviously, they got the call wrong. I don't think it was pass interference, looking back at it 100 times. But you make a call like that, it's non-reviewable. You've already spot the ball, right? The ball's been spotted. It's Georgia's ball. And then the 100-foot video board, right, is right there over DKR Stadium in Austin, Texas. And you're telling me that you didn't watch that? And for 5 minutes later, you're like, actually, I think we should, before the fans just storm the field because they're throwing bottles on the field. Actually, we're gonna reverse that. No, that just makes absolute no sense. And I think that is from as objective as I can be. And, as a football fan in general, it's just a horrible precedent. And you heard the backlash from everybody nationally. It was it was beyond just Georgia fans. It was like, we can't have this.
Yeah, because, and it is crazy. You really can't have that because, the referees have to realize, I know they're under, committee and all that stuff like that. And they get reviewed as well. But they need to review them a little bit harder, because you see it not only in college, you see it in the NFL too. It's like these refs are, they're able to sway the outcome of these games, by some of the calls that they make. And, all the speculation now with, the gambling and all the sports stuff going into it. It's just like it makes everything even more like it's just under that many more eyes, that much more scrutiny. And I think that, they just have to be held to a higher standard than they used to be because the game's changing and the things that you can do and the money you can earn from either viewing, watching, betting, whatever on the game, you can. They have more power now than they used to have with just calling it anyway, and then also just calling it. They got to get better. They got to get reviewed either harsher or just at a different standard. They've got a lot of different rule changes that have been going into implementation throughout the last couple of years, and with all that stuff like that, you got to start reviewing the policies of the refs too. Not just the rules of the game. Because everything changes and everything is uniform.
Yeah, it has to be accountable, just like Kirby Smart, Carson Beck, Steve Sarkisian, Quinn Ewers. They had to get up in front of those lights and cameras. On one hand, Beck threw 3 interceptions. He's going to get questions about that. He don't want to answer questions about his interceptions, but he has to. And he's a kid. He's a kid, and he has to. Head coach, Kirby Smart got to kind of rant and have a good time because his team won, and props to him. Sarkisian had to sit on the other side and talk to reporters for 20 minutes, whatever it was, about getting beat at home. As the number one. So these guys are held accountable for whatever happens.
Yeah, they need to do press conferences. They need some press conferences for real. They need to.
Yeah.
Because in the way that reporters come to the kids and ask them, like you just said, there's crazy questions or put them on the spot, and it's after a game and your emotions are running hot or just either just whatever's going on, whatever's going through your mind, and you're still having to be professional. And these refs, they just get to call a game and it's like, all right, whether I did good or bad, like I'm going home. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying like they don't go and get reviewed by the committee like they're supposed to, but just from the immediate sense of like, hey, you just called this, like you need why would you call that? And if it was wrong, you definitely need to, be on the, somebody needs to interview and ask you why you called it in the first place. Cause like it's just, and they're human, everybody's human, everybody makes mistakes. We get that, but it's just like, hey, everybody who's at this level, performing at this level, or working at this level is held to the same standard.
Yeah.
They expect the video guy to get the shot of the touchdown that's ecstatic, or the interception or the turnover that's and there's no excuse. If you miss it, it's like like it might be your job. So it's like, hey, like the same way we hold the same standard for everybody else in the workplace, they've got to be held to the same standard too.
Absolutely, man. And I feel like it's such an easy thing to kind of sit here and say. I think it can be done.
Oh, easily.
Yeah, it can be done. Now, these guys in college, that's not their full-time job. Those referees are also by conference. NFL is completely different animal when it comes to how they treat officials. But I think just a few minutes, right after the game, the head official come in, tell me, we're going to ask you questions about certain calls you make, and nobody expects them to be perfect. Referees have never been perfect. Yeah. Humans aren't perfect. Quarterbacks aren't perfect. Head coaches aren't perfect. Kids aren't perfect. Whatever.
But it gives that sense of accountability. You know what I mean? Of like,
absolutely.
Like I've got to answer to people. Like it's not just kind of like my autonomy is like, if I throw the flag, it's just the flag. It's like, okay, well, like I can throw the flag, but people are going to be wondering like why I throw the flag. So it makes me be a little bit more decisive in in my decision making.
Yeah, and just knowing you have to be transparent is going to make you have a different type of focus, and that's what it's going to lead to. And I think instead of all this beautiful things that we're trying to throw out there, John, that I think would help, and I think it's kind of a consensus. I've seen other people. I'm not the first person to say this. You aren't either. I've seen it elsewhere. Is instead of that, what could be, we have a vanilla statement from the SEC after the game, saying basically the refs called it wrong, figured out they were wrong, and then fixed the call. And the call was ultimately right. That's what all they said. They didn't say the fans should have been penalized, because any other stadium I've seen, you do that crap, that's a penalty on the home team, baby.
On the home team, yep.
Absolutely. It's your house. Accountability. Yep. They didn't say anything about that. There was nothing about the review or how it couldn't be reviewed. But you telling me a referee didn't sit there and look at that stinking video board? That would be review, and that would be illegal. Nothing about that. They just kind of give us a vanilla thing, move on to the next week, and that's the crappy part to me. It just that's not a good look for anybody.
Yeah, exactly. No. And I agree.
Yeah. So, and listen, we'll get off of this topic now before we talk about it for 40 minutes. But the sad part is like we're gonna. The vast, like nationally, we're going to forget this, and we probably already forgot it, unless you're a Georgia or Texas fan.
The next there's going to be more calls.
Exactly, and then there's going to be another situation that we're like, hey, these guys got some accountability. We might be having the same conversation next week. We don't know. But I digress. Let's move on. John, I want to ask you about Florida, Georgia coming up, and we're not going to go in depth detail here. We have a whole nother week to do that. We'll do that next week. But I want to ask you about how Kirby Smart treated a bye week, and this particular bye week, because there's always been that bye week before Florida. It's in the same place every year. One of the best rivalries in college football. Yeah. Florida's been a little bit in the trash side of things and in the trash heap for the last few years, right? But it's an SEC football game with a lot of talented players. How did Kirby Smart treat this bye week when you were in Athens? I'm really curious about that.
I will tell you this: it is a very serious week. You have the same. Honestly, I want to say the way that they prep for Bama is probably the same way that they'll prep for as far as structure is for Florida. It's one of the bigger games. It's a premier game. You're playing in the NFL stadium. Every year, and it's like you said, that Florida Georgia rivalry, and that runs deep. Not even just in college, like it's deep in high school. You know what I mean? It's like who's got the best athletes? Who from Florida, from Georgia? The people who go to schools here, and even the city. The city knows it's the biggest cocktail party of the year. You know what I mean? And it definitely lives up to that name every single year. And I would say that this kind of gives me a similar feeling to, I want to say, my junior year when we ended up going all the way, and we went down there and played them, and we beat them pretty bad. They had a good football team that year too, and they always do have a decent football team. Right now, I know they're going through some cultural changes and just trying to figure out what worked for them. And they've had kind of, like you said, kind of trash part of the season this year so far, but the crazy thing about Georgia is, man, like it's a blessing and a curse. Everybody plays us tough, and not saying that they end up, that's the outcome that happens, but we always have to show up, and we always have to, kind of show up fast, and then be like, okay, like assert our dominance, and it's like, all right, this is this is the Georgia football team we thought we were going to show up against, and as long as they do that, they're fine. And I think coming off of, being the number one team is also a blessing and a curse, because now you're like, okay, we played good. We're, having that confidence again. And, it's easy to just relax. And these guys they can't relax. You can't relax any game, especially one with this much hype around it. And that's all Florida's like, they're licking their chops. They're like, hey, like, if we beat Georgia, like they beat the number one team, like, yeah, they lost to Bama, like, so like they're kind of like in between. This is a team that we beat. This is like literally their Super Bowl. You know what I mean? Like I said, when we play Kentucky every year, it's kind of the same way. It's always just a hard game, like just tough. You know what I mean? And this one doesn't have to be tough, but you've got to go in and handle your business from the beginning, because Florida's a team. If you let them feel like they've got something to hang around, then they'll find a way to hang around.
Yeah. How much of the bye week was spent on Florida, and was there any future opponent prep? Maybe not by the players, but by the coaches.
The coaches, I would say, yeah. Sometimes it depends. It depends on, like, if you're putting in new packages, new scheme, or a couple of new plays, you might go over them, and you might even end up using them in the Florida game. You know what I mean? And it's not just necessarily like opponent prep. I would say it's like your self prep. You know what I mean? Like they're just like, okay, let's install some new stuff right quick. Let's try something new, for this game where we think this package could work against this opponent. Let's just see what it looks like versus our stuff, or like, versus, just different carded periods and things like that.
Yeah.
But they try to focus. It's like, let's focus on us right now. They might have a day or two where it's like, okay, I know we had some days where, we're about to play Georgia Tech. Like we had like a period, like a couple weeks before, where we just started working on cutting. So it wasn't like, the week of the game, like, you're just taking on 100 cut blocks. You know what I mean? They don't do that anymore, but they used to.
Yeah. So, I'm glad. I bet you're glad that rule happened.
100%. 100%. But I used to take pride in it too, man. It was fun throwing them boys in the dirt.
Yeah, I love it, dude. Big men get to do some fun things, though. That's for sure, on the football field. Now, I think that's interesting that you say that, because I've heard that. I just wanted to see your perspective on it since you were there. But Georgia having Ole Miss on the slate, and that offense, and the issues that Lane Kiffin offense poses anyway. You think Georgia's coaches are looking into that? Ole Miss has a big game this week against Oklahoma. Oklahoma runs a similar look defensively, and wants to be the team that Georgia is defensively. So I think that'll be interesting scouting for them. And also, Tennessee and that offense, and Josh Heupel, which has been inconsistent but had a great win against Bama. I mean, those are the two big games in the SEC race for Georgia. Obviously, you need to get through those. And even a loss to either one of those, a loss to both of them, that doesn't look good. A loss to either one of them can really shake some things up there in SEC talk and CFP talk. But I think that win over Texas should get Georgia through, even with another loss. So I think Georgia's definitely probably looking ahead to these guys from a coaching staff perspective. But like you said, I think a lot of players talk about that, how it is mostly on them and what can we do better during the bye week. And then that next week, this will be Florida and that prep. And a quick look ahead to that Gator team. They've looked better recently. Graham Mertz went out as the starting quarterback. They were doing a 2-quarterback system with former 5-star DJ Lagway for a minute. That, crazy enough, they were playing decently with that. And then now it's all DJ's show after Graham's out for the rest of the year. They just put 48 points up on a good Kentucky defense. That's impressive. I think they're offensively feel much more comfortable with Lagway in there, what he can do skill set wise. Rocket arm, can move well in the pocket for a freshman. So they are playing probably the best football they've played over the last 2 seasons, maybe 3. So I know they have some confidence from that. So I think there's a chance here, Georgia. You can't let them stick around. You said it. If you give them any blood in the water a little bit, they get a successful explosive play. Boom, they're in the red zone. They're threatening. They score there. You know how these SEC games go, man, and momentum and everything.
And you literally saw it. When we played Mississippi State, the explosive plays, and I think we predicted the game. They weren't even supposed to get like over 7. You know what I mean, for us, and it was just you're like, okay, like this is what we mean. Like, you got to start fast. You can't let teams think they can hang around, because when they do think they can hang around, they start to hang around. They start to build that confidence and build that momentum, and that's all it takes, for SEC play, because it's literally like, hey, like how the coaches have all been around. You know what I mean? They've all been around, whether they're at the same program that they're at or different programs before. So, ball is ball, but SEC kind of has this brand of football that is played, and it's played by every university. It just depends on who plays it the best that day. So
yeah, absolutely. And quick injury update here before we pick some games. We're going to pick them here in a bit for the slate. Smile Mondon missed that game. We talked about him earlier. Kirby Smart, quick update, not much into his update, but basically saying that Smile is with the team. He's doing some work. He's got that foot injury. So keep your eye out on him for him coming back. I think he will come back this season. It's just a matter of when. Bye week obviously helps with that. Micah Williams had a lot more snaps against Texas. He looks like he's back. I don't think he'll have an issue unless, knock on wood, something happens the next 2 weeks. Roderick Robinson has the toes, hasn't played it down this season, but he should be in that area with coming back soon, hopefully, for Georgia. Nothing from Kirby Smart to kind of keeping that on their back pocket, but look out for him. Also, Branson Robinson is going to miss extended time with that MCL strain. I don't expect him to be back against Florida. Tate Ratledge dressed out. He was an emergency offensive lineman. Obviously, they didn't need him. The offensive lineman played good with Micah Morris and Xavier Truss moving there to left guard. Monroe Freeling, those guys played well. But Tate Ratledge, his schedule was to come back around Florida. So it all depends if Georgia wants to use him and push him in there or save him for another week. I don't necessarily think they need him to win the football game. Georgia typically is good, and Kirby Smart, he's going to save his players for their career. So I don't think you're going to push any guys back, but there is a real possibility that trio of Smile Mondon, Roderick Robinson, and Tate Ratledge come back sooner rather than later. John, let's pick some games. You went 2-3 last week. That's not bad. I went 2-3 as well. I'm just 1 over 500 for the season. College football and the parity that the transfer portal has created, dude, and the NIL. There's so many teams. Look at Indiana. Look at Iowa. Look at Iowa State. Look at Navy, Army. These teams that were not even on the radar.
Yeah, getting ranked in the rankings.
They're undefeated. I mean, how cool if you're an Indiana Hoosiers fan. I mean, that's awesome, right?
That's awesome. Yeah.
Now, you might, the season could come crushing down at any point. But it's awesome. But that
gotta ride the wave while you can.
Absolutely, dude. I think that's what the transfer portal has kind of done the opposite of what people said. They were like, okay, the rich are going to get richer. The smaller teams, and like in the Big Ten, the smaller teams, the ACC, and even like Vanderbilt and the SEC. Look at what Vandy's doing. They're ranked for the first time since 2008. So I think the transfer portal has done the opposite, which has made teams more competitive, which is a good thing for college football. Absolutely. So speaking of Navy, let's pick that one. Notre Dame, right? They lost to Texas A&M. No, they beat Texas A&M. They lost to Northern Illinois in week 2. They've won, 6 straight. Notre Dame at Navy. Navy's undefeated. Number 4 rushing offense in the country. Number 4 scoring offense in the country. Notre Dame's favored by 14 points here. And they're at MetLife, John. Who do you like here?
Not going to lie. Give me Navy.
It just feels like it, don't it?
It just feels like it. And I would say they're going to win by a touchdown.
Oh, you're calling outright win.
Yep, they're gonna win. They're gonna win by a touchdown. It's gonna be a good game.
Dude, that would be incredible, and also horrible for Notre Dame fans losing to Northern Illinois Navy in the same year. That's be only 2 losses.
And I'm not gonna lie. I'm not like I'm not gonna bash Notre Dame, but it's kind of crazy to just be a school who makes their own football schedule and still lose games to terrible teams. Like, I'm not saying terrible teams, but teams that are not supposed to beat you.
No. You can say terrible when it's Northern Illinois. I think from a talent perspective. Let's just say that. I'm sure they're great people, but talent perspective, they are terrible when you compare them to Notre Dame. I don't blame you for saying that. No, I'm going to take Navy to cover the 14. I think they make it a game. I just think Notre Dame defensively, if anybody could stop them on their schedule, it's probably Notre Dame. They beat them like 42-3 last year. But the thing about Notre Dame is they did lose to Northern Illinois, and their offense is so inconsistent. Yeah. I mean, there's Riley Leonard, who transferred over, did not throw a touchdown pass until 4 weeks into the season. And they were throwing it. Look, it wasn't just because they were running it every down, dude. That's so strange to me. I think they're kind of – it's the same – unfortunately, we see it with Notre Dame. almost every season, which is they beat bad teams badly. Maybe they slip up every now and then, but it's bound to happen just because of the offensive woes. It's that team can't get a good offense where they threaten teams with a balanced attack, and that's not good for them.
I agree.
Let's go Illinois at Oregon. This is interesting because Illinois has got one loss. It's another one of those teams that we're talking about here. One of they're ranked for the first time in years. Number 20 Illinois at Oregon. Oregon's getting 22 points here, so they're favored by 22. That's a lot of points, man. And Illinois played.
I think Illinois. I think Illinois will cover the spread. I think they 22 is too much for me. They still got a damn good football team too. That one loss, they still playing well. So I think they cover the spread.
And that is a traditional. I mean, I'm talking as Big Ten as you can get. I mean, run the stinking ball, play defense. And Oregon is not that type, right? They're going to run. They want a high power. Defensively, they have played well this year, especially after the win against Ohio State. I think Oregon sleepwalks just a little bit to where Illinois covers that.
That's
right?
literally what I'm thinking too. I'm thinking that, all right, they kind of give them that little bit of leeway, and it's like, okay, you don't get the 22 points, maybe 14, but not the 22.
Yeah. All right, we're on the same page here so far. We got 3 more. Texas at Vanderbilt. Texas minus 18.5 here. This is a ranked matchup. Crazy enough, this is like Vanderbilt's absolute Super Bowl right here, baby.
Literally.
Woo. This is either
they get Bama and Texas in the same year. We're gonna be hearing Vandy's back for a while.
Yep. This is a weird game, right? I mean, because of that fact. And you're going to give your best shot to Texas, who really wants to prove something. So it's either a get-back game, and Texas is like, we are going to keep our starters in every stinking snap until we beat you by 50, or they're just emotionally drained a little bit from last week. Maybe they're banged up, and this is a hard one for me. I'm not going to lie, John. I want to take Vandy very badly. Mm-hmm. I think Texas offensive and defensive line is just so much better, man. They might hang with them for a couple quarters. I think Texas is going to beat them by like 25.
Yeah,
24.
I think I got Texas too, and I think they got like a bad taste in their mouth, and they're already we already lost. We had number one. It was short lived, and we got to fight our way back, to the top. So we got to make this happen.
Yeah, and on that note, and folks, that's why we're covering more nationally this year on this show than we have previously because of the playoff being expanded.
Yeah.
You don't know who you're going to face. You might face Texas 2 more times. You could face Texas in the SEC champ and the playoff. So we got to watch what these guys do. And I think we're going to learn a lot about Texas this week because of the things we just mentioned. Do they have that makeup within their team and their players to answer like Georgia did after that loss to Bama, right? To overcome that and play better because of it. We'll find out. Missouri at Bama. Speaking of Bama, Missouri at Bama. Now, Bama's getting 16.5 points here. Okay. Missouri obviously got just absolutely destroyed by A&M. Here's the thing of this one, and Missouri has the team to keep this one close. But the thing is Brady Cook, their starting quarterback, might miss the game.
Yeah, I was going to say, he might miss the game. Yep.
Absolutely. They're already down their starting running back. He's not going to be playing. So it's like, I mean, you're kind of coming in this one limping. What do you think here?
I definitely got Bama. You said what's the spread?
16.5.
I got Bama all the way.
Okay, I'm kind of leaning Bama too. We're either picking we're either going off each other to pick, or we're just on the same page completely. I don't know.
Yeah, today. Yeah.
All right, last one. We'll get out of here. LSU at A&M. Game of the week. These are 2.
I was definitely say, damn, this is a good one.
Ooh, man, come on. I mean, because Kyle Field and then LSU and Death Valley, 2 of maybe the best college football venues in the country. Not the best, but 2 of the best, folks. Before you stone me.
And it's in Death Valley.
It's not. So it is in Kyle Field.
Okay.
Kyle Field. And the line started LSU, moved to A&M, and now it's a pick 'em. So now the odds makers are just like pick one because we don't have a line to put on this. I kind of get that feeling because A&M is playing at their best, LSU's playing at their best. They're both undefeated in the SEC. This is a massive game for that reason.
I'm in between. I might have to go. Everybody's been getting beat at home lately, man. I'm not gonna lie. It's been crazy. I might have to go LSU. No, I have to go LSU.
I don't blame you at all. And because it's a pick 'em, I think and I know you said it there, the home atmospheres haven't been exactly a huge barometer on who's going to win this game. But I'm going to go with A&M because I think their defense can really give the LSU offense and Nussmeier some problems. The offense is playing better, even though I'm not a huge fan of Connor Weigman. He's gotten better after coming back from that injury. Whoever controls the line of scrimmage, right? And I think A&M has the players to do it across the board. That LSU offensive line is good, though. Can they hold up against that really, really good A&M front who loves to just wreak havoc, like you said about Georgia? They got some havoc wreakers. Can they do it? I'm going to go with the home team on this one. You got LSU. We'll see what happens, dude. That's going to be an awesome game. And if you're a Georgia fan, I would definitely watch. You might see these two. But I think that's a great place to end, John. So thank you so much for coming on and giving us your expertise. And as you rehab that ACL, man, we all wish the best wishes for you there to get back on the field. Can't wait to see you back on Sundays. And hopefully we'll get you on again this year. I mean, your bullpen. I mean,
bullpen. Shout out to the bullpen, man.
0.0 ERA, baby. I love it.
Appreciate you, JC. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, and if you're watching on YouTube at the Pulse Sports Network, hit that subscribe button. If you're watching on Twitter or Facebook, we really appreciate everything that you give us and your feedback. Really appreciate it. We'll be back next week. Go in depth with Florida and